This is the story of a little guy named Steven, who one day woke up and discovered that a bunch of annoying red guys built a castle on top of his mountain. And, well, he's kinda pissed. But it's not just a story of Steven and his trigger-happy quest up a mountainside to defeat this enemy, it's a story of how I made him and an entire game around him from scratch in only 6 days. There's this really cool dude known as Brackies who's hosting his 12th official game jam, and that means that I've got myself 7 days to make the best game I can around a certain theme. And this time around, the theme is Calm Before the Storm. My only issue is that I spent the first day of the jam editing my last video, so I only got myself 6 days, so I hit the hay ready for day 2. So because a game jam is basically an opportunity for developers to kind of branch out and try stuff they never done before, normally I make a 3D game, but this time I think I'm gonna make a 2D game. And if you don't know this already, active ragdolls are like my favorite thing. And a long time ago, I made this active ragdoll 2D controller that I never ended up using for anything, so I think now's the time. I just gotta figure out what to do with it, but first, I need to get it off of here and put it onto here because I'm doing all of this on my laptop. So yeah, here we go. I got the Ragdoll controller onto my laptop, but I quickly realized that the entire thing was super janky. I don't know why, but the little dude was just doing this weird jig, so I decided to just scrap that entire script and use bits and pieces of it to create a completely new one, and eventually I got the Ragdoll working, so that was pretty lit. So, I've got this nice little character controller done, but you know what I don't have? I don't have a plan. So that's what I gotta do next, so it's time for me to hit the pen and the paper. Okay, calm before the storm. Alright, so I already got myself a movement system. All the game needs now is an objective, so this should be a piece of cake. Plan A. You get a certain amount of time to gather resources, and when the time's up, you have to use those resources to fight off a horde of enemies. No, everyone's gonna do that. Plan B. You have to build a shelter so that when a storm blows through, you can be safe. No, that's not a creative idea. Plan C. A storm wakes you up and... Wait a minute, this might work? All I need is my Pro Controller. Plan D, Plan E, Plan F, Plan G. Not enough time. Sounds boring. Way too simple. Way off theme. Okay, let's go a different route. How about you're the storm? Storm of bullets? Storm of rage. K, J, I, H, L. Bombs. M, guns. N, swords are kind of fun. This idea is kind of stupid. Lame. Boring. Overdone. Plan O. Plan P. FPS. RPG. Nope. Plan Q. Less likely than Bible 2. Plan R. S, T. Windows. Mac. Freaking Wii. Nope. Not you. I'm running out of letters, dude. Plan U. No. Plan V. Nope. Why is this so difficult, man? Okay, Plan W. I think this one's good. So my idea is kind of inspired by John Wick. You've got this guy who's just minding his own business and then something really pisses him off and he goes on a rampage. So I thought it would be cool if the player had to climb to the top of a mountain for the calm segment and then they would fight a bunch of enemies at the top and that would be the storm. The only issue is that it was getting pretty late in the day at this point, and so I decided to just sleep on my idea and maybe iterate on it the next day. Hey, so I've got a general vision of what I want the game to look like, but it's not super clear up in the old noggin. So what I want to knock out first is the systems of the game. That's the enemy AI, the weapons, respawning, all of that stuff, because that's going to heavily influence the level design of the game. Anyway, I gotta get cracking. Let's go. I want to begin by focusing on player movement and enemies, and the current script that I'm working with has a grapple function and a dive function, but since I had a different plan for the player movement, I decided to scrap those two features for the meantime, but I kept the code anyway because, you know, you never know. In the meantime, I also made an enemy by duplicating the player and then just shifting the code around a little bit, and then I gave the player a gun, and if you can't already tell, this is the movement that I was talking about a minute ago. I just didn't quite know how to nail it yet. For some reason, after that, I gave the enemy the gun and I made the player defenseless, and on top of that I added post-processing, which made the whole game look way better. But the enemy's got a little bit of a problem, as you can see. Every time he fires the gun, his arms just kind of flail around and he doesn't really have a good way to aim at the player. So I did a little bit of fudgery, and after a whole lot of confusion I managed to make the enemy able to aim. There's still a couple things wrong with the enemy though. Number one, the player is still in control of when the enemy fires their gun, and number two, the bullets aren't being physically simulated, so you're not getting getting any of that nice physics girth. On top of that, the enemy just kind of stays in one spot, and that's not good. But since it was getting pretty late, I decided to just stop there and save it for the next day. Bullets. I hope you never got hit by one. I put together a simple script for physically based bullets that also add a little bit of force whenever they hit something. I also gave the player a gun again, so now you can shoot the enemies too. The next thing I had to figure out was enemy AI, and this part was surprisingly easy actually. All I had to do was detect if the player was on the left or the right side of the enemy, and then as long as the player was a certain distance from them, they would start walking towards him. So now that the enemy knows how to follow the player, I decided to give the game a little bit of spunk by adding dismemberment. So now every time an enemy shoots you or you shoot an enemy, that part of their body that you shot gets cut off in a very non-violent way. So now that I had all these combat systems in place, I decided to start making a build of the game so that I could see how it works outside of Unity. And while my game is building, excuse my jet engine, I kind of forgot to hit the join button. So now that I'm thankfully actually participating in the jam, my game is fully built and it's ready to test out. And as you can see, it works perfectly. So that means that I can finally start working on some kind of level. So the first bit of the level that I want to knock out is the snowy mountain climb, because that's the calm part and I've got to figure that out so that it can contrast well with the storm. So once I had a general idea sketched up, I went into Unity and I started blocking out the level, which basically just means putting primitive shapes in the places where you want the ground and the walls to be. But for some reason, deleting the environment I already had kind of messed with the enemy AI and it didn't really work anymore. But by the time I managed to figure out the enemy AI, it was already way too late for me to start working on the level again, so I decided to just save the rest of it for day 5. So it's day 5, I've got a couple systems left to do. That's the damage system for the player and the respawn system. And then of course I've got the whole snowy mountain bit to do. But anyway, I've got like 3 days left to do all this, so it's time for me to get cracking. So I kind of failed at day 5. All I ended up doing on this day was making a really base level damage system where you turn white every time you get hit, and after 3 hits you die. And I also made a respawn system where you can just press space every time you die and it will reset the scene. And you'd think I have time to work on the mountain, right? Nope. Yeah, I ended up making this little corridor of a castle for some reason, but that's all I ended up doing, and for an entire day's worth of work, that's not much. Day 6 rolled around, and day 6 was comparable to a bunch of Boy Scouts during a thunderstorm. In other words, things were getting intense. But seeing my failure the day before, I was super productive on day 6, and I found this thing called a freeform sprite, which made it way easier to get the mountain level completed. I figured that the main stick guy kinda needs a home, so I built him a little log cabin, and I also gave him a lantern to hold because it reminds me of the Polar Express, and I love the Polar Express. Before I went on with the rest of the level, I also made these cool little 2D sprite art signs that kinda direct the player where to go. After that, I added some snowfall particles to really sell the wintry vibe, and I added spikes in a bunch of different spots, and I also made these snowballs that you can shoot to destroy. And by the end of day 6, I had a really nice, solid platforming challenge. But there was one big problem I noticed. You see, I'm really good at my own game, and it makes sense because I'm literally the guy who made it, but chances are that most other people playing won't be. And if the game was a challenge for me, it was definitely not going to be easy for most other people. So I took a little time to make the game a lot more forgiving, and I think it paid off because the game is still fairly difficult, but only to a point where you feel a sense of accomplishment when you get past an obstacle without making it completely impossible. And with that, the mountain area was pretty much done. But I still got a lot left to do, because remember, the mountain was the calm. I've still got the storm to wade through, and I got one day to figure it out. Okay, so the jam is ending in about 9 hours, and the worst part is I haven't really done anything on it today. So now I've got a ton of the game left to do in a very small amount of time. But alas, I gotta get cracking. Wish me luck. Just 3 hours left. It's hopeless.
Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, Justin. It just has to be fun.
Okay, so I finished all that I really could of the storm area, and as you can see I kind of based it off of like a gothic Victorian castle. I don't know what I was really going for here, but it kind of slaps. And there was supposed to be a boss fight in this big tower, but I didn't quite finish that. And I was about to turn the game in, but I realized one crucial issue, and it's that this game has no sound. And I'm not a composer, so I can't just make my own music. So I reached out to a bunch of people on Instagram and Discord, wondering if anybody knew how to make music and possibly had some tracks that they hadn't used before and would allow me to borrow. And I came across this dude named Jay Fawcett, who was really cool about his music, and he said that he was just doing it as a hobby, so massive shout out to this guy for letting me use his tracks. And so with an incomplete but definitely playable game, I turned it in for the jam. Alright, so the jam results came in about 2 weeks ago. I know, I'm really late to this party. And I got 235th place out of 1500 entries. So if you do the math, that means I did better than 84% of other participants, which is a lot better than my first game jam, where I got 323rd place out of 780 entries, and that means I did better than 58% of people that time. So there's been a significant improvement between then and now, and that's really what I'm looking for, because my goal is to make my games and my videos more personalized and better over time, and I think I'm kind of coming closer to that. But I had a lot of fun making the game. It's not completely finished, but it probably will be soon. Look for a devlog around Halloween, maybe? I don't know, I'm really bad at keeping my promises when it comes to upload timing. But anyway, thanks for watching, God bless, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.